Hey guys, aarava here, and welcome back to my F1 Let's Talk series. This is the series where I get to talk about in real life Formula 1 over the course of a season, and of course this is for the 2016 season, and as you can see by the title, this is the very first video of the season for car analysis, and this is for the Ferrari 2016 Challenger, the SF16-H, and wow, what a different looking car to what we're used to. Ferrari finally changed up the livery, added in splashes of white on the top of the engine cover and around the car. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this brand new livery. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's alright, or do you not really care too much? But anyway, let me know that good stuff in the comments below. But let's get straight into the analysis of this car, probably the more important part of this video, because there's quite a lot of different changes to this Ferrari car for 2016, and they're all very, very exciting. So we go to a front view of the Ferrari car. I've highlighted things in yellow that you need to look at. So the first major thing is, of course, the nose. The Ferrari has gone for a very Williams-esque nose this year. They've gone for that little finger nose with the kind of upside down U shape on the main part of the actual nose cone. Obviously very contrasting to the nose they went with last year, which is very long and kind of wide. And so to me, obviously over the winter, it kind of says that they kind of realized maybe that long kind of wide nose was probably hindering them more than it was helping them. And you know, even the Mclaren, who went with the same similar style nose last year, then reverted to a sort of finger nose like this halfway through the season, whereas Ferrari kind of just stuck to their guns and kept the long nose right till the end of the season. So it looks like finally they've agreed on the fact that it wasn't probably the best way to go. So they've gone with the shorter nose, which allows airflow underneath the car. As you can see right through those two channels where the kind of finger makes a little dent in the actual U shape. You can see two little channels. Air's going to go through there. It's going to go towards the underneath of the car, and it's going to move the air all the way around to the back of the rear. The second thing to note, and this is pretty major for Ferrari, is that they finally moved to a pushrod suspension, something they haven't done for 5 years now. They've been using the pull rod suspension, but now they finally moved to the pushrod. And it's all the convention in Formula 1. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think pretty much now every single team uses pushrod suspension. It's just a bit of an easier way to go about it, although pull rod did have advantages in terms of, because the pull rod is actually going downwards, it actually acts as an aerodynamic aid. But with the pushrod, obviously, there's that huge gap between the suspension rods that just kind of, you know, the air just goes cleanly through. It doesn't get affected by any sort of rod in the middle there. The third thing to note is that on top of the side pod, at least for the launch spec photos and this car that they presented for the launch of the car, the side pod on the top is all flat. If you remember to last season, it was a very dipped side pod. Ever since I think it was the Spanish Grand Prix or the Monaco Grand Prix, they basically went from, you know, going out from the chassis, it would go flat and then it would indent into kind of backwards L shape if you looked at it on the left hand side. So they've gone for a flat one. I'm pretty sure, I think that's probably just going to be a launch spec thing, because I think that worked quite well for them last season. They had it throughout the entire season, that sort of step down side pod shape. So unless it's due to cooling and they need the side pod to be that flat to allow space for the actual radiators to fit into the actual side pods, then I'm gonna guess they maybe will revert back to that kind of step side pod, because it did work for them quite well. You know, they kept it the entire season, but I may be wrong. They could just be purely for cooling, because if we move on to the overhead shots a little bit later, you'll see why the whole cooling aspect may be quite important, because they've really slimmed down the back of this car. And the final thing to note is, again, with the front wing is pretty much the same as it ended in Abu Dhabi, from what I can tell. If you look at the comparison photos right now, it pretty much looks like the exact same front wing as they finished off in Abu Dhabi. Obviously, they may obviously develop onto it on preseason testing, and then by the time we get to Melbourne, it might be different. But as usual, with pretty much a lot of the teams now, a trend this season is going to be this kind of swooping tunnel of cascades going kind of going outwards towards the car to keep the air washing out on the sides of the tires, around the tires, to kind of neaten up the airflow. So speaking of that rear end, we move on to an overhead shot of this Ferrari car, and straight away you can see, look how damn slim this Ferrari car is at the back. It's a lot like the McLaren of last year, that kind of size zero package as McLaren kind of called it. Ferrari have really slimmed down this engine cover at the very back. They've really pinched it in there, and obviously that also means that hopefully they've improved cooling. They have mentioned they've done some major upgrades to the engine. They stated in interviews that they've improved the architecture of the actual engine, so that will help the aerodynamics in a positive way, because it means they can package the whole engine a little bit tighter. So they've kind of reworked everything and made it a lot more slimmer, and that also probably means they've moved the radiators a little bit further up, so perhaps that's why they haven't got the dipped side pods. They said they've moved all the accessories, and we did not only work on architecture, but we've improved the combustion, for example, and the inlet aspiration, and also the turbo. So they've really tried to work as hard as they can in this engine. Obviously, a big part of the actual pace of the car this year will again be determined by the engine, and they have to try as much as they can to catch up on Mercedes, who's still very much the leader of the pack in that engine department. And I think they've done a spectacular job to really package the car that tight. And you can see at the very end of the car, it actually opens up a little bit more, just to allow that little bit of cooling at the end. Another thing to note is a lot of slot gaps on the rear of the floor of the car. That was a kind of trend that we've also seen from last year. We saw McLaren taking it to the extreme. I think Ferrari is the first one to bring in a few slot gaps on the end of the floor there, and then McLaren took it to an extreme of doing about 7 or 8. It looks like Ferrari have now gone down that path of having 8 slot gaps or even 9 there, right at the edge of the floor towards the tyre. That's going to help neaten up airflow. And finally, obviously, just a little illustration at the other end of the car of the actual nose. You can see the very much finger kind of nose, the little stub, very much like the Williams car, the kind of the upside down U shape and the little stub. And then again, you can see the kind of general shape of the front wing, having a really arched curve out towards that outside of the tyre to kind of neaten up airflow and push the air around outside the car. Another thing to note is that Ferrari at the launch, at least, and in the photos of the launch, have on the front brakes, they've actually closed off the brakes. There's no actual hole in the middle of the actual hub. So last year, Ferrari ran blown wheel nuts, and a lot of teams have been running blown wheel nuts, and that's essentially allowing air that goes into the brake duct, a bit of a channel. There'll be a channel in the actual brake duct itself, and any air that goes through that channel itself won't actually even touch the brakes. It will go straight through the hub and come out the actual hub opening, and will mean that air comes out of the hub and gets immediately pushed back towards the car. It just really cleans up the airflow on the outside, and Ferrari ran that last year. It looks like they've closed it up for the kind of presentation, so maybe they just don't want to give off the fact they're going to use it again, or they might have closed it. I don't know. We'll have to see the preseason testing. I definitely think you'll see straight away on day one, but I do believe they'll probably still run it because it is a very advantageous thing to do. If we move on to another overhead shot, this again just kind of emphasizes how thin they've made this car. On the left is the 2015 car, and on the right is the 2016 car. And you can see just how slimmed down this entire engine cover and this entire rear end is. Really, really pinched in. And you can also see the distances on the green lines of the actual side pod itself. They've made them a lot narrower. The actual gap that it comes through between those two lines is a lot narrower, and they've really done a great job. And again, you can see the dramatic change in actually slot gaps on the rear floor compared to that just one little node on the actual 2015 car. Moving now to the overview picture of the car, I've circled the barge boards. They've carried forward the slot gaps in the middle of the barge board that help cut drag. You can see I've circled all the way on the exhaust there. I've circled that and actually pulled it to a little bit of a simple diagram. Basically, you can see there, if you can just about picture on the actual picture itself, there's a little second tube underneath that main exhaust, and I've actually done a little diagram of what it actually looks like. It's a Mickey Mouse style exhaust, and this is actually the extra wastegate exhaust they're allowed this year. The wastegates that are apparently meant to make the engine sound a little bit louder, but that's to be debated. But basically, this allows a bit of a wastegate channel to come through, so they split off where the exhaust kind of pushes out the air. So they've kind of gone with 2 little small ones underneath the huge one, so i.e. a kind of upside down Mickey Mouse shape. I've circled the top of the car, the little winglet. Nothing new there. That's actually been there for the entirety of last year, but it is a very nice trend of all the F1 cars now. It's pretty much become a kind of staple thing to have a little winglet there on the top of the chassis. That helps airflow kind of get channeled to the top of the rear wing. The actual side pod shape, again, I've just noticed how slim it is because it is really damn slim, and they've also kind of narrowed and lowered the kind of actual inlet a little bit, again allowing, kind of alluding to the fact that they might have improved the cooling and the actual architecture of the car. They've packaged it a little bit tighter, but at the same time kept the cooling the same. That is just fantastic for them, and that should really give some good signs for how the engine's going to perform, and also just aerodynamically that will just improve it. So guys, that's been my analysis of the Ferrari F1 2016 Challenger. If you have enjoyed the video, smash that like button and let me know what you thought below. Let me know what you thought of the livery, again, if you haven't done already, in the comments below. Do you like it or love it or hate it? Let me know in the comments, all that good stuff. If you're new around here, then hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this. We're going to be doing car analysis of most of the cars on the Formula 1 grid. We've got McLaren coming up on Sunday. We've got Mercedes, Red Bull, Force India, Toro. So all the cars kind of launching over the weekend. So I will be bringing videos of most of the team. So stay tuned for that and get subscribed for that. And also, as I said, this is a year-long series. There's going to be videos every single race weekend analysing new aerodynamic parts and just generally talking about the race weekend. And you guys can get involved in the comments. It's always a great place to get involved in the comments below. It's like a little F1 forum basically for you guys. So let me know what you thought of this launch. Obviously, the Williams launched earlier today. I'm not going to be doing a video on that because the Williams actually hasn't changed too much. There are quite a few little nice subtle differences in the Williams, but as a whole, I don't think there's any point doing a video on it just yet, because Williams have said they're going to be changing the front end of their car quite a bit before Melbourne, so I think it'll be more worth doing it later on. So guys, again, if you've enjoyed that video, hit that like button. I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.